Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Audacity podcast with Pastor K. I am so grateful for all of you who have tuned in this morning, and I hope that you are having a wonderful, fantastic day. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today and what we're going to share. So let's get right into it. During our last episode, we relaunched the Audacity podcast. And I had the opportunity to share some information about what audacity means. And I want to go back into that during this podcast because I want to make sure that we have a really good working definition of what audacity means, what it means to you, what it means to your process, what it means to you possessing the promises of God, and actually what it means to you accomplishing your dreams and your goals in life. So I've learned that beautiful people do not just happen. There is something that beautiful people have to endure to become who they really are. There is an audacity that beautiful people have to possess in order to become their authentic selves. It doesn't just happen. There's work involved. There's a boldness that you have to have because we all encounter trouble. We all encounter adversity. We all encounter issues. So during the last podcast, I gave some definitions of audacity that I just want to revisit real quickly today. So when I speak of audacity, it's having the boldness to take risk. When I speak of audacity, I'm speaking of courage, a boldness, a daringness. And again, here's the definition that really resonates with me, the definition that God spoke into my spirit. Audacity is having the boldness to take the risk of faith to be who I already am. Audacity is having the boldness to take the risk of faith to simply be you. So regardless of the situation or the circumstance you may find yourself in, neither that situation nor that circumstance diminishes who you really are. And because the situation or the circumstances diminishes who you really are, then you can still shine in spite of it and in the midst of it. But our challenge is that sometimes we allow our circumstances and our issues to diminish our light. We allow the circumstances to diminish the brilliance of our shine. So it's bad enough that we have an issue, but sometimes we can make the issue even worse by what we say to ourselves or what we believe about ourselves as a result of the issue. Listen, in this life, we're all going to encounter some problems, but trust me, God has a plan for our problems. And just because we encounter issues or encounter struggle or encounter circumstances that might not be favorable, it does not mean that you are not who God says you are. So we can't allow the issue or the circumstance to define us. God has already done that. Instead of the reality that the issue is a circumstance that does not have to be our conclusion, we sometimes allow ourselves to get stuck in the issue, to get stuck in the circumstance. So I'm encouraging you today to be careful about what you're saying to yourself and what you're believing about yourself when you have challenges, when you face issues. Again, it's a challenge that we all have to face. How do we process the issues that we go through? What do we say to ourselves when we face circumstances that are not favorable? Remember, I told you that on this podcast, we're going to marry theology and psychology. So I want to just give you some psychological background about what we call shadow beliefs. Shadow beliefs are those sometimes unconscious beliefs, those I can't. I don't have what it takes to do this. I'm not good enough. It's never going to work for me. I can't ever get it right. I'm not going to be successful. All of these thoughts are what we call shadow beliefs. They're in our unconscious, but they have enough power and influence that it impacts our behavior. These are the shadow beliefs that if we leave them unchallenged or unaddressed, these shadow beliefs will hinder our progressive movement in becoming our authentic selves. These shadow beliefs can limit our reach. Again, these shadow beliefs can limit the brilliance of our shine. So we have to be intentional about challenging these kinds of thoughts. And the way that we challenge shadow beliefs is what we call counter beliefs. Now, counter beliefs are the positive thoughts that produce positive behavior, even in the midst of negative situations, negative issues, negative circumstances. We have to challenge the shadow belief and bring those beliefs into captivity. Now, you know, I'm a pastor, so I'm always going to refer to the Bible. So listen, there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about bringing our thoughts into captivity unto the obedience of Christ. Well, what does that mean? We have to bring our thoughts into captivity and in submission to what God has already said about us, his thoughts toward us, and even his thoughts toward our situation. We have to challenge every shadow belief and bring those beliefs into captivity. So let me give you an illustration. And I'm going to tell you a little bit a story about a woman in the Bible. Here we go. You know, I'm going to be Bible-based. But these stories have such significance to us and even practicality. So there's a woman in the Bible, in the book of Mark, you can read it, a story of a certain woman. Now, this woman is not even named. She's just known as the woman with an issue. And how many of us can relate to that? That sometimes people define us by our issue rather than the reality of who we really are. Or we're even guilty of defining other people by their issue and not really knowing the true, authentic person. And we have to be careful about that. So here's a woman who has an issue. The Bible speaks she has an issue of blood. So her issue, of course, caused her shame. Her issue caused rejection. And I want to just ask you, what issue are you facing today that may be causing you shame or maybe causing you to feel as if people are talking about you, or that you're never going to amount to what you really believe you could, or you're never going to possess the thing you believed you could because of this issue? What are you saying to yourself about it? This woman, the Bible says she lost everything. She spent all that she had trying to address the issue, trying to correct the issue. I want to ask you the question, what are you doing to correct the issue or correct the circumstance? What are you saying to yourself about it? Because what you say creates a framework from which you work, a framework that deals with how you feel about yourself. You develop a frame, a perspective about your life and about your ability. What is your frame of mind about your issue? Are your thoughts limiting you? Or are your thoughts provoking you to push through? Are your thoughts paralyzing you? Or are your thoughts provoking and pushing you to trust God in spite of it? Are you paralyzed in your movement? Are you stuck? Well, this woman, she had the audacity to press through the adversity. She took the risk of faith to go into a place, an environment where she really wasn't supposed to be, according to scripture, but she had the audacity to do it anyway. She had the courage. She took the risk of faith to press, to receive what she believed she could have. She did not allow her circumstance to cause her to remain stuck in her circumstance or in her situation. And that's what I want to say to you today. Where are you in your circumstance, in your issue? And will you have the audacity, the risk of faith, take the risk of faith to push through? Because remember, what's true for you right now can just be temporary. What's true right now does not have to be your conclusion. She had this issue for 12 years. Can you imagine all that she went through? Can you imagine what people were saying to her when she would try? Why are you trying this? You've had this issue for so long, you're never going to get out of this. I'm sure she heard that. I'm sure she may have even felt that, but at some point, there was an audacity that rose up in her so that she would press through the adversity and listen, advance her frame. You can advance your frame. Please, we have to be careful that we don't get stuck in just one scene of our story. We have the power to advance the frame. That's called audacity, taking the risk of faith. Well, we know the end of the story. She pressed through the crowd. She touched the hem of the garment of Jesus. And as a result of her press, as a result of her taking the audacity, as a result of her taking the risk of faith, she possessed what she believed she could have. She was healed. And I believe that today, that there are some of you that need to press through the adversity, because I believe you can possess what God has promised. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. We can bring it out of the Bible and we can make a real life story for us today. All right? So let me tell you a little bit about me. I was married for 30 years, have 3 wonderful sons. But there came a time in my life where my husband and I call him my husband now. I affectionately call him my husband. We're good friends, but we're now divorced. After 30 years of marriage, we're in the church. I'm a minister. He's a trustee. So can you imagine the shame that I felt, the guilt that I felt, even some of the rejection that I felt from people who meant well, but did not know how to talk to me about the situation. 30 years of marriage and ending up in divorce. So yes, I felt shame. Yes, I felt rejected. But one of the greatest revelations that God gave me during that time, during my grieving process, was that He had not changed His mind about me. His thoughts toward me were still thoughts of peace, to give me an expected end. So even though I was divorced, even though I went through the grieving process, even though I did not feel the best about me. I mean, I've been in the church, I'm a minister. What does it look like for me to be divorced? But life happens, women. And when life happens, we have to have the audacity to press through. So even though I'm divorced, I had to recognize and realize that God had not changed His mind and that I was still who God said that I am. He hadn't changed His mind. And His thoughts toward you, regardless of your situation, His thoughts toward you are consistently consistent. He still thinks the same thing about you that He thought about you before you got into the situation that you may be facing right now. And somehow, some way, God will cause all things, the good, the bad, the ugly, the shame, the guilt, the pain, He will cause all of that to work together for your good. Trust me, trust and believe. He will cause it to work together for your good. And I personally had to have the audacity to shine through my darkest days. I had to have the audacity to still believe that I am who God says I am. And I had to refuse to be stuck. So I want to infuse and cultivate that kind of audacity into you. That no matter what you're facing, be careful what you say. No matter what you're facing, be careful what you're speaking to yourself. Monitor your self-talk. Don't talk yourself out of a blessing because of what you're going through. Don't talk yourself out of a promise that God has made to you because you made a mistake. Be careful of what you speak to yourself and have the audacity to take the risk of faith that you can still possess what you believe you can have. You can still possess what God promised you. If I had gotten stuck, what about the people whom my voice is assigned to? I would never be able to speak. If I had remained in a bad place, I wouldn't even be on this podcast today. Listen, there are people who are waiting to hear your story. There are people that you can help just by sharing what you've gone through. So I want to encourage you again, advance your frame. You are still needed. You are still valuable. You are still loved. And women, you are still necessary. Now, you may have some scars, but believe me, you are still beautiful. So listen, I want to leave you today 5 declarations. And I want you to make these declarations. So please listen carefully and go back and listen to this podcast again. I want you to make these 5 declarations in spite of what you're going through, in spite of what you're facing, in spite of what your circumstance is. Number 1, failure is not final. Listen, failures do not define you. A failure defines the experience that you've had, but it does not define who you are. Make the declaration, my failure is not final. I can still advance from this place. Come on. My affliction that I'm enduring right now has an assignment. Come on. So my failure is not final. Number 2, the second declaration that I want you to make and rehearse. My adversity will advance me. Whatever my adversity is that I'm facing, my adversity will advance me. When we experience adversity, I want you to ask yourself, what is the assignment of this adversity? What is the assignment of this affliction? What is it? What is it produced in my life? Why has it come into my life? And what can I gain from it? And therefore, how can I grow from it? So my adversity will advance me. I have to believe that whatever I'm experiencing as adversity, that it is on an assignment to advance me into greater what? Into greater knowledge of who I am, into greater knowledge of who God is, into greater knowledge of my strength, my ability, remember, my boldness and my courage. So the declaration is, my adversity will advance me. Remember this, please, for those of you who are believers, do not forget about the uneven exchanges that God gives us. In the Bible, he says, I will give you beauty for your ashes. So remember, whatever your pain is not in vain. Your pain has purpose. So now we have to consider, what is my pain offering me in ways to advance me? So again, my adversity will advance me. And because my pain has purpose, the third declaration is, my pain will produce promotion. My pain will produce promotion. I know that it's difficult and challenging. I know that sometimes we are hurting, but we have to learn to allow our pain to become our transportation to a new testimony. We have to allow our pain to become our transportation to a new testimony about the power of God to keep us, the power of God to heal us. That our pain now becomes our transportation to a new testimony about our personal power to endure, our ability to persist even in spite of. So my pain is going to produce a promotion. It's going to move me to a new place. I know it's difficult right now. For some of us, you are in the most pain you've ever been in, what you are experiencing. If you will consider that this pain is going to promote you to a better place, it's going to transport you to a new understanding of who you are and who God is, then your pain will produce promotion for you. You have to make the declaration. Again, it's not just going to happen. I'm not in any way diminishing the grieving process. It's necessary. And again, sometimes it takes time. People say time heals all wounds. I'm not sure about time healing all wounds, because sometimes it takes an intentionality on our part to heal. We have to want to be healed. We have to want to move from this place. And sometimes the best way to move is to recognize that you are still needed, that we still need you, that you are still that one that has a word for somebody else, even in the midst of your pain. So allow the pain to cause promotion in you, to move you to a new place, a new testimony. Make a declaration that my pain will produce promotion. Remember, when you're grieving, when you're in pain, be kind to yourself. Don't rush yourself through it. But I do want you to consider giving an expiration date to some of the behaviors that are associated with your pain. So sometimes pain can cause us to withdraw. Sometimes pain can cause us to isolate ourselves. Sometimes pain can cause us to just sit still. And that's okay for a time. Grieving is necessary. But again, allow your pain to be transportation to your testimony. And what's your testimony? The testimony is, I made it. That even though this has been one of the most painful seasons, I made it. By the grace of God, with the support of family and friends, I made it. My pain will produce promotion. Number 4, there is still life after loss. I know that sometimes when we lose loved ones, for me, I lost my marriage. Sometimes it can be so incredibly painful that we feel like life is over, that our life will never be the same. And it's true that sometimes our life will never be the same. That does not mean that our life cannot still be good, and sometimes even better. So there is life after loss. I know you have to take some time to grieve the loss, but your life is not over. You have to pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and still shine in the midst of the loss. I promise you, just from my own story, I had to learn that it's okay to grieve, that it's okay to sometimes take a step back. But taking the step back just gives me the opportunity to just assess where I am, assess where I want to go, and then pursue. So even though I may have suffered a great tragedy, a great loss, there is still life for you after the loss. Again, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, surround yourself with people who can pour into you until you can regain your strength. But as you do, I want you to know you will laugh again. You will love again. You will move again, because there's still value resident within you even after the loss. So make a declaration that for me, there is still life after my loss. That my loss has not caused my life to be over. There is still something about me, within me, that I can do, that I can possess, that I can shift and help others. There is still life after loss. And number 5, the 5th declaration that I want you to make, I want you to speak this with such boldness. It's my time to shine. Remember, to have audacity means that you take the risk of faith to still shine even in the midst of adversity. We're all going to experience adversity. We may all experience loss. We may all experience unfavorable circumstances. But in spite of it all, listen, women, it's your time to shine. That there is still a beautiful brilliance about you, even in the midst of adversity, even in the midst of trouble, even in the midst of problems. Make the declaration. It's still my time to shine. I know I may be going through something right now. I know I may not be where I want to be right now, but right where I am, I'm still going to shine. Right where I am, I'm still going to believe that there's purpose even in this. Right where I am, I'm still going to believe that this too shall pass. I'm going to shine. It's an intentional declaration that you have to make, and then have the audacity, the boldness, take the risk of faith to do it. Shine brilliantly, even in the midst of whatever you're facing. That's all I want to say to you today. I trust that this podcast has been inspirational and helpful to you. Please remember to have the audacity, take the risk of faith to go after what you believe you can have. Take the risk of faith to go after every promise. And in the midst of it all, remember, make your declarations. Failure is not final. My adversity will advance me. My pain will produce promotion. There is still life after loss. And it's my time to shine. I hope that you've enjoyed the podcast. I'm looking forward to sharing with you again. Please share this podcast with someone who may need to hear this. And remember, ladies, it's your time to shine. I'll see you next time. Love and blessings.